by telling me a bit about how you manage to balance all your roles?
I always say that I don't know if I balance all my roles or I'm very good at focusing on what I need to at a particular time. I think it almost impossible to do everything well simultaneously. So I choose, right now I'm focused on my son, family and career. So I'm sure you realize you don't see me out and about as much, as I did maybe 8, 10 years ago. My son is now 10 years old. And that's because I choose to spend most of my time with him, nurturing him, participating in his activities, etc., my free time. And like most young women, I think of my generation, my era, we were taught to work hard all all the time. So that's exactly what I do. That means a little bit of sacrifice in one area of my life. But I firmly believe if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not really a sacrifice. So I'm having as much fun as I did 15 years ago, right after I won Universe, but it's different fun now.
Okay, is it difficult for you living your life in the public? Is it more difficult now as you're a mother as it would have been or than it would have been before your son was born?
Being a public figure is like everything else in life, a double-edged sword. And I choose to focus on the positive. So like everything else, there are aspects of being well known that I enjoy. And there are aspects of it that I don't. I will admit it is a little bit difficult for Elon because he's, as I said, 10 now, very much aware of certain things, and just freedom. And life is a little bit different for him than some of his friends in that regard because everyone knows his mom and by extension him. So there's always a little bit of pressure on him, in terms of his behavior, that kind of thing. I mean, he is a 10-year-old boy. Hello. He's a great kid, but he's a 10-year-old boy. And that's sometimes a little bit of a challenge. Sometimes he's impatient if someone wants to come and chat with mom or talk to mom, or he's excited to show me something and someone interrupts us, or a few persons interrupt us in the middle of a special moment for him. That's difficult, and it's hard to explain to a child, if you know what I mean. How I have handled that is by being very honest and straightforward with him. So he is relatively patient for a kid his age, but still I understand it's a challenge, so I try to balance it. When we do need alone time, or he wants to do something special with me, and he's in a space emotionally or otherwise where he needs my undivided attention, uninterrupted attention, sometimes we take off together for a little mini holiday if we can. And why? Just because he needs that occasionally, because it never turns off for him. I've grown used to this, and it's not his doing that he's my kid. And before going out on his own, and when I say on his own, from 0 to about, I would say 5, 6, he never went anywhere without me or my mom or my dad in Trinidad. And as a matter of fact, anywhere. And when he was about 6 years old, I allowed him to go to Movie Town with our neighbors to hang out. And it was the first time in his life, and I never thought about this before he brought it to my attention when he came back, that he understood what anonymity is. He just thought, because I am not standoffish by any stretch of the imagination. I do my own grocery shopping. I pick up my dry cleaning myself. I, buy my roti on the street from Anita in St. James. Hey, Anita. And my doubles from UE, George X, anywhere. I can get good doubles. I just live life. So as a result, doing that with me, he just thought everybody knew everyone else. Because from birth until he was 6, everybody knew my name and everybody knew his name. Once we were together, hi Wendy, hi Elan, whether we were in the supermarket, in the market or greengrocers, didn't matter what we were doing. And as I said, he went to Movie Town with our neighbors, and no one knew him, and no one knew them. And that was his first realization. Okay, something is a little bit different here. So he came home and he asked me, why does everybody know us, Mommy? And why doesn't anyone know Uncle Dexter and Auntie Nicole? And, I explained to him, I didn't get into great detail at that time. I just told him that his mom had done something a few years ago, several years ago, that Trinidadians were very proud of, and it was on a global scale, so most people know me and recognize me. And that because he's my son, most people know and recognize him too, and I left it at that. But he's a child of this age. So I was on a business trip. He was staying with my mom, as he usually does when I'm traveling, and he asked his grandmother, and he then Googled Wendy Fitzwilliam. And there it was, everything. So he looked at clips of Miss Universe, interviews I've done over the years. He still, as most kids his age, prefer to look at as opposed to read. So he looked at a ton of footage on me and sort of got a feel for what this whole universe thing was about, and subsequently. So that has been a little bit of a challenge. But otherwise, there are a lot of perks that go with being a well-known person as well. I think generally, once you give respect, people give you respect in return. If I am not in the mood to socialize, I tend to stay home.
Okay.
And if I am rushing, I have to, I explain. I'll take 2 minutes and say, no, honey, I'm really sorry, I can't now. If I've had a facial, like I sometimes do, and I run into one of my favorite eateries around Port of Spain, and I'm looking like a dog, I don't think there's a woman on the planet who likes being photographed after she's had a facial. I will promise the guy behind the counter or the girl behind the counter, next time I'll show up looking decent and we'll take a picture together. And I do, because Trinidad is small, and it takes very little effort to be kind. And I'm a human being like all others, so I have my bad days, and on the days that are not great, I just stay out of the public's way. I didn't, the public didn't invite me into their homes, really, if you know what I mean. I boldly showed up. So I think I give respect, and 99% of the time I get it in return.
Once your son got the experience not being recognized on site, is it something that he wanted more of?
Emphatically not. Alan certainly over the years has developed a certain dislike for public attention. And as I said, it's not that he's also very social. He acts, he plays pan, he plays the trombone, he does everything. He drums, he swims, tennis, you name it, football. He's into everything, and he's a very social kid. He loves hanging out with his friends, with my friends. I have a few friends I have to ask him permission to see. That said, he enjoys people as people. So if it's a relatively superficial interaction, he's not so into it. And as I said, he's a 10-year-old boy. So, if we are boogie boarding at Maracas or skimboarding or something, and he's showing off his tricks and skills, the last thing he wants is to stop and take a picture for someone of mommy. You know what I mean? And in that regard, it's a little bit difficult.
Okay, being a single mother.
Yes.
But apart from not just being a single mother, but Wendy Fitzwilliam, a single mother, did you have to battle with some of the natural prejudices and discrimination as single
motherhood?
So,
as a single mom, and as a very well-known single mom, I think like all other single mothers, I have had my share of what you would call discrimination, I guess, bias, and often not from the people you expect to be biased or not terribly supportive. And that said, I've also, because of who I am, I do continue to get, I think, a tremendous amount of respect here, because I am genuinely Wendy. There's my public persona is very similar to who I really am. I may be a little more sloppy in real life, meaning sometimes, as I said, I show up bare face. You know, the hair is not as neat as it is now. So I just stick a bando on, and the huge sunglasses I hide behind occasionally. But that said, generally I've gotten a tremendous amount of respect. You know, my single motherhood has not dramatically impacted me post Elon's birth. During my pregnancy, of course, that was a huge hullabaloo here, because I chose to be a single mom, because I and I appreciate that I'm a role model for a lot of young people. And I think, and please, I hope your viewers do not mash me up for this, but given the fact that 70% of West Indian households are run by single mothers, not single parents, like single mothers, as distinct from single dads, and there are a few of those, I think it is more that the visible signs of sexual activity out of wedlock that's offensive. No one has ever treated Elon badly. And everybody in Trinidad and Tobago knows he is he's my child, born out of wedlock to me. No one, ever. From the minute he showed up, I talk about this in my book. You know, I remember clearly after the announcement of my pregnancy, I'm a Roman Catholic, I go to Mass every weekend and enjoy my faith. But I got destroyed, not only in a Catholic church, I'm sure, in many other churches at the time of the news of my pregnancy. And I remember sitting there in my church, and every single eye in that congregation was on me, while the priest lambasted me and, you know, compared me in some ways to, you know, the criminals of the Bible. it was a tough sermon to sit through and not fall apart. And after that sermon, so many people, so many married couples, particularly older couples, that I had worshipped with forever since my childhood, came up to me and said, you know, we're very proud of you. This could have gone a very different way. And we're very supportive and continue to be. But once Elon was born, none of it. It immediately disappeared. So I think it was the physical manifestation of sex outside of marriage, an ever-growing large stomach. That's what was truly offensive. And why I say that, the lawyer in me has done my own little research. And I listened to so many of my friends and my older friends talk about, you know, their children who are doing well in college or whatever. They're at university in the UK or in America, and they're going to Cabo San Lucas or Barbados for the weekend with their boyfriend, and nobody's offended. You know? Because their boyfriend is fabulous and comes from the right family. But he's still the boyfriend. You know? So as I said, once Elon was born, a lot of that negativity disappeared. And the priest who gave me such a hard time during my pregnancy, now mind you, I never stopped going to that church. I didn't go anywhere else.
Why?
Because my faith, like all others, the Catholic Church in my head facilitates my relationship with God. It's not, the Catholic Church in and of itself is not the end. No religion. That's why, and that's the beauty of being a Trinidadian. Just being born here taught me that. You know, a couple of weekends ago was Diwali, and I celebrated Diwali with my Hindu friends in DB, South Trinidad, who are also Presbyterian, and they celebrate both with full gusto, and I do too. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Because we're all worshipping the same God. So in much the same way, I always use a comparison of like the Diego Martin Highway or the Churchill Roosevelt Highway. I love those roads because they get me to where I want to go fast, right? But if there's a pothole or broken light on either, it may be jarring initially. I may get a little upset if I land up in the pothole or the light slows me down, the malfunctioning light slows me down and the whole country down. But you get over it and you move on. And church is the same thing for me. Church is not the end, it's the means to an end. It's just a vehicle by which I communicate comfortably with God. So that's why it was very easy for me to go back to my same church. Not even a different religion, not a different church within the Catholic family in Trinidad. And I went to the same priest. And the very first priest to bless Elon when we had returned to Trinidad after his birth was that priest. And that priest loved my son until he left that parish. The same priest, you know.
So, but that would have had to take remarkable strength, though, especially the first time you would have targeted you while you were in the conversation.
Child, that is so surreal. An experience like that is so surreal that you don't have time to get angry. You process the emotion of an experience like that when you are being spoken about in a grand, even if negative way, in your presence. That's not something that most human beings have to deal with on a daily basis. So I had not had to deal with that at that scale before. You know, I've heard things before, like standing in, you know, the line at the ladies' room at a carnival fete, and I'd hear a woman say, if Wendy Fitzwilliam should come in here and jump this line. You know, and I'm like, because if somebody would whisper, Wendy coming, or Wendy's here, she's coming to the bathroom, and somebody would say something like that, and I'm like, oh, I'm standing right here. And those you laugh off, you know what I mean? But on a grand scale, to be either revered or pummeled, you don't process it right away. Do you know what I mean? It takes a little while, at least for me, to internalize something like that. So after I left Mass that Sunday, I was fine throughout the Mass. I was fine afterwards, talking to the people I usually see in the churchyard after. But I couldn't go home right away, and I didn't want my mom to know that I was upset. You know, so I jumped in my car, and my safe space in Trinidad is the Queen's Park Savannah for two reasons. It's a huge circle, so I don't have to think too much about the driving when I'm driving in that space, one. And two, because all the traffic is flowing in the same direction, no one can see me thinking, crying, cursing myself. It's just, that's my safe space. So I did a few Savannahs after Mass, and then I went to my mom's and had lunch. You know?
Just okay with it now.
Yeah, and even then there was no, that's why I was able to go back to that because I understood where it was coming from. You know, I subscribe to the church. You know, my parents chose that faith for me, and I like it. Like, I genuinely like it. I like others too. But that's the one that I feel most at home. That environment is the environment in which I feel most at home. The first non-Catholic school I went to was the University of the West Indies. From nursery school to the end of high school, upper six, all Catholic. So it's home. It's just as comfortable as going to mummy's for Sunday lunch. And when you become a member of any organization, you basically agree to their rules. And if you break their rules, you get slap on your wrist. So in fairness to the church, you know, I broke the rules. You know, I may not have been in my head, because human beings love to justify their behavior, deserving of what we in Trinidad call a planas in front of the entire population, my entire community. It may have been great for my priest to call me aside and have a conversation with me, even chew me out, but privately. But I understood where it was coming from.
Okay, but what if your experience was shared, or it happened to someone who didn't have share your background, so they didn't have that strength, somebody weaker than you? What then?
Well, and that's where I hope my experience has, and me documenting my experience, has helped and maybe supported a couple of other young women and men. Because you're right, and my support systems, my strength does not come from a title I won several years ago. It is the upbringing that I received from my parents, my extended family, my neighbors. I always rave about being raised in Diamond Vale, Diego Martin, because it's a true old school community where everyone takes care of everyone else, still to this day. And you know, like my godfather, his family, my godmother, her family. These are things that, as a Trinidadian, you only truly appreciate when you leave here, if you have the opportunity to live outside of Trinidad and Tobago. But by and large, we are generally very confident people. I remember in high school at St. Joseph's Convent, there was no hard crew. We were all cute as can be in our heads. You know, the kids who played every sport imaginable, they were very, very cool. You know, the punk rock kids who loved punk rock, who lived, all of us had hair like Bon Jovi. It was the 80s, even the black girls. We all, in our own way, thought we were the coolest things. And I think that's great about Trinidad and Tobago society generally. Now, are there those of us who are falling through the cracks, who don't have the support that I did from my parents and my neighbors, etc.? Yes. But there's still many of us who are willing to help and assist and take care of. And those who are falling through the cracks, I hope they have the opportunity to interact with teachers, with coaches in various activities. And that's why it's so important to get into things outside of yourself and outside of your device, your tablet or your phone.
What are you most passionate about?
Ooh, my passions. The thing I am most passionate about in this phase of my life, in all honesty, and I think from our chat, it's clear, and that's my son and my family. I really enjoy nurturing and raising and liming with this kid. I mean, we'd have a ball together. The choices I make professionally, a lot of them have to do with him and how they will impact on him at this stage of his life. I expect within the next 3 to 4 years, maybe, on the outside, if I'm lucky, that's wishful thinking, he'll be over mommy to some extent. You know what I mean? He's going to be a young man, pre-teens, ready to rumble with his posse. So I'm enjoying it fully right now. I'm thoroughly enjoying motherhood. I thoroughly enjoy the top model franchise, Caribbean's Next Top Model, and that's a lot of hard work because we've never done anything like that before in the Caribbean on a sustained level, and that is produce TV that's about us, by us, for the entire region. So whether you're French, Caribbean, Dutch, Spanish, English, you're living the lives, every series, through these young women who come from the whole region, how we interact with each other. The sub-story of Caribbean's Next Top Model is our story. And we delve into all of those little taboo areas, of everything, from the way we look, the way we carry ourselves, our sexuality. There's little snippets of everything. That's why the region is so hooked on the show. And it's no one else interpreting us. We are presenting ourselves as we want to be presented. What's next for Wendy? To quote my girl Riri, work. I am writing again. Okay. I have been for a while. Nigel, forgive me. I am behind in terms of the production of my manuscript because, as I said, getting Top Model off the ground and going as we would like has been very challenging because it's a big project and the first of its kind in the region, but definitely worth it. So that's our focus, to build this franchise and then continue to sell it and expand its network globally. Professionally, that's right up there. In terms of my son, it's getting him through SCA. That's the next big step without panicking. And why? Because I think we put our kids under too much pressure for that exam. I don't think the abundance of extra lessons are absolutely necessary if the school and you as a parent are doing your part. So maybe a child may need a little bit of assistance in a particular area, but this swath of, no life for 2 years, not about that. So I'm trying right now to make sure for the next couple of years that our lives are balanced, that Alan is still enjoying his extracurricular activities and getting ready for SE without making himself sick in the process. And in terms of my life outside of the professional, my son, there is none right now. I'm focused on him because I know where you're going to go next. So I'm answering your question up front. I think, again, get into a serious relationship. I still hope to settle down and get married one day, but Alan is my focus, So that has to happen in tandem with everything else going on in my life. That must fit in well.
Okay.
But it's not something that I would actively pursue now because I'm very focused on my career and my family.